Hey, you're listening to the Intentional Mind podcast, and on this episode, we're talking about purpose, how to live in alignment with your greater purpose or figure out what that is. And we're also shining a light on some of the lies that we're often told about us not being enough, not having enough, all of that stuff that often holds us back, those beliefs that we get from our culture, and we start to compare and things like that, and we start to get distracted from our greater purpose. So we're going to have this deep conversation with one of my friends, Fenton Reese. So I met Reese back in the day when I was a broadcast journalist, or I was studying to be a broadcast journalist in the Army. So it's been over a decade ago. And Reese was there also studying journalism, so combat journalism. And he was a Marine and I was in the Army. And anyways, we ended up being friends. And then I've not connected with him in so long. And I saw something, a post from him. And it was his poetry and him, little clips of him speaking. And I was like, this dude, like, I really want to have him on the show. I don't even know what I would say for him to talk about, but I felt this tug, like he needs to come on because he has a message. I just felt that. You ever feel that in your life where you feel like you're called to do something? So it was like, I remember it was like late at night when I messaged him and I was like, hey, like I need to have you on my show. And then here we are. And this is weird for me, guys, because I'm pretty intentional about who I have on the show. And it's usually very thought out. Like there's a specific topic that they're going to talk about and all the things. But with Reese, I didn't feel that way. Like I was like, just come on and we'll chat and we'll see what flows from there. So here he is today on the show. So I'll just let him tell you more about him. But there's some really good messages here. And he also shares a little bit of his poetry with us. And it's so good. Right away, you're going to realize that he's a very gifted speaker. And we get into some deep stuff. So I think this message will really serve you. So let's just turn it over to Reese. Here we go.
Oh man, well, like I said, first and foremost, I'm honored. I appreciate you having me. Like I say, it's it's a cool feeling to be desired, to be heard from. I mean, I think that's really cool. I always tell people, I'm just an instrument. You know what I mean? He's the speaker, and I just go from there. But yeah, I remember back in the day going from the Marine Corps and then until now, I bounced around a little bit, went to school. I actually am a speaker turned musician turned speaker turned musician turned speaker because I did music. That was always my dream and my everything. And then at the last minute, I kind of got shifted into wanting to um, get into the spoken word side and just really start speaking to people directly as opposed to through the music. And I mean, the music is still something I do, but the Lord kind of moved me, and I want you to focus on my words. I want you to focus on the people and the heart of the people and the soul of the people. I found myself as a storyteller. And so from that point forward, that became where God said, all right, this is what we want to do. We're going to go this way.
Okay, so clearly you felt the tug to do this work. Tell me a little more about that.
Okay. So oddly enough, funny story. I actually was always into. Well, I used to always get in trouble for running my mouth. That's one thing. As a kid, like every day I was always in trouble for talking. Um, and getting into the speaking side of it, I actually used to do speech meets and stuff back in the day. When I was a kid, I did competitions, and I just loved it. And I loved getting on stage and speaking and portraying these people and characters and speeches of the past and seeing the light bulbs. I've always had this affinity for the stage when it came to speaking. I did a little drama and stuff, but my thing was just talking to people. I just loved it. And then when I was in seventh grade, we actually started a rap group, and we were at the lunch table. Oh yeah, and I was walking down the street. You doing the little raps, and we started a little rap group, and that's when I really got exposed to like the hip hop side and the music side and the poetry and the rhyming, and I was like, yo, I like this. And then I realized I was like, man, I'm actually okay at this. I can put words together in it. This is cool. Because I myself was not cool. So the one cool thing that I was is I could do poetry and speak. And then honestly, just went from there. I literally just
Oh.
continued with it, and it became my vehicle of expression. Music and hip hop became my vehicle of expression. And because I'm not a particularly emotional person, but that side of me was able to be exposed and brought out. I was able to live um, live my soul out through the words and the lyrics. And
Yeah.
just as time progressed, it became so deeply rooted into me. And I went through a lot of different things, and you know, my stories and my poetry became that outlet as I went through these different trials and tribulations. And honestly, from there, that was my coat in the winter, was my words and poetry. And then as time progressed, I got out of college and kind of got moved dealing with a lot of young people in college. I got moved to work with young people, and God kind of put this burden on my heart for youth and young adults, and I'm like, man, and ended up making a faith move to Florida, to Jacksonville rather, and doors kind of just opened up. Honestly, I didn't intentionally go to be a speaker. I just ended up doing what I believe God was telling me to do. And I just so happened to go to this meeting at the church. And the dude who was at the meeting at the church was the vice president of this company. And he was like, hey, I said, hey, and it was the same company that was Boys and Girls Club that I was trying to be a part of in the first place. And sure enough, we got connected. I got hired. And then as time progressed, I ended up transitioning and being a speaker for them, and was able to travel all over to different elementary, middle, and high schools and start teaching life skills and speaking and combining sometimes my poetry and then going into a inspirational speech for the kids. You know what I mean? Like it was just life, man. And I tell people all the time, I probably feel more alive on stage sometimes than I even do just walking around on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Being an instrument, being up there, it's like, wow, like this is where I'm supposed to be, like, so I
Oh, I
really,
love that. And I love
yeah,
that you say that, because I think a lot of our listeners are wanting that feeling of like, this is meant for me. Like, and I know the exact feeling that you're talking about, because I get that too when I'm teaching or giving, out information. And it's so interesting because you brought up the rap thing when you were
yeah.
younger. I used to do raps too back in the day.
Oh,
And
now,
it's still a thing now that we laugh about. Like just the other day we were eating with friends and they're like, okay, come up with a rap right now. And I could like write something very quickly, and it's super clever, and and I've always kind of had that way with words too, and been drawn to that. And it just like a light bulb went off to me when I was thinking about just being a kid and some of those things that we were drawn to. And I see that pattern with you. And I think a lot of us that are looking, for the thing we're supposed to do, or what are honoring our gifts and things like that, you can see evidence of it way back in the day, ever since you were little, like how you played, what you
the hard
did.
one.
Like, do you feel like that?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest problems with a lot of people in society, unfortunately, is that society strips us of our childhood. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when we get so caught up in careers, we lose the idea of being children, and we lose the talents and the gifts that were initially and innately put in us. Like we think they tell us that it's, oh, that's a silly dream as a kid. Well, the reality is that children's dreams are the purest dreams you're going to find. And I think their intentions are some of those purest intentions. And I think as children, we're given glimpses of what we were called to do in the first place. Am I saying it's
Yeah.
gonna, no, you're not gonna be a pony. You know what I'm saying? But if we think about the ideas of all of those visions that we had as kids of what
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to do, who we wanted to be, I believe those are appetizers. I think that's God giving you a little nugget saying, hey, this is the direction that I've built you for. You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so as time progresses, unfortunately, that's why society works so hard to strip us of our focus, strip us of our purpose. Because as time progressed, we get so caught up in the rat race, and we were called to be eagles. You see
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of uh, thoughts there, but I would just say that I agree. I think that as a kid, there are things that we are all drawn to. And I think those are definitely some indication of maybe not exactly, but potentially the area by which we were meant to impact the world or impact people.
Exactly. And it may look a little different. Like, for example, Reese and I were like, we're not rappers today, like hardcore rappers, like on MTV or something or whatever. Like, but there is evidence of like we were interested in playing with words sharing, in a sense, a story, entertaining, or whatever that is, or a message. We were always interested in that. And now we're being used in different ways. And it's like following that interest, following that curiosity. So a lot of times with my clients, I'm telling them, like, when they're like, I'm not sure what I want to do, or what I should be doing, or what my purpose is, and all of that stuff. I'm like, what are you curious about? Like, what gets your attention? Because something gets your attention. And anyway, so with that being said, I'm curious to know, when you're on the stage, right, and you're sharing different messages, it sounds like you go with whatever like feels right in those moments. And you're very intuitive. I pick up on that. But like, what is one of your favorite messages to share?
Oh, one of my favorite messages. Yeah, I know. Actually, it's not as hard as I think. I think the most important thing that I want to share, particularly talking to young people, is that your life matters.
Oh.
I think, to me, like, because I think that encompasses all of the things. So if I say, if you truly can understand that your life matters, that you're here for a reason, that your existence is evidence that, like, you matter to this generation, there's something, like I always tell them, I say, you have something the world needs. And I think that if you understand that your life truly matters, then you will value what is valuable to you. And so you will protect yourself against poor decisions, bad friends. You won't want to you won't even be drawn to getting caught up, drugs and all this other stuff, because the reality is my life matters.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? If I meet somebody who, especially relationships, half of these kids, their whole lives get jacked up because they start messing with Jerome or Shakrika or somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the reality is, though, if you realize that your life mattered, you wouldn't waste your time with something that doesn't value it.
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
That's kind of how I view it. So if I can give one message to anybody, your life matters. You're not here, and everybody has their different beliefs, but I tell them all the time, I say, I don't believe you're here by accident, even if the circumstances of your birth were accidental. I don't think that there is no reason to say that you want a reason that you're alive. Somebody thought you should live.
Yeah.
Somebody decided to let you live, period. So there's your reason if you're looking for any reason. And so that's my biggest thing, is like, if you can understand that your life matters, then you will do the things that matter to build your life. And you won't do the things that are going to hurt your life, because what you do now can directly impact not just you, but the community, the future, and the generations to come. And it's not trying to give them any pressure, no pressure at all. But, it's like, I like to speak, I like to just give them be real with y'all. Like, what you do impacts you and everybody around you, and so don't let the culture and society tell you, that it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's so good. And really thinking about too, it's like the culture and the society. I feel like there is that underlying message, and something that's been so, like, last night I was up, I had a hard time falling asleep because I had found out that one of my classmates from high school had committed suicide. And it was so hard for me because I was just thinking about how she felt like her life didn't matter. And I was just texting my friend yesterday that, like, you see this, I've been seeing this as a common trend, like on the news and things like that. This whole, like, something awful happens in your life, or you're having a really hard time, and then they think the answer is suicide. And it hurts my heart so much, because it's like, I want everybody to feel like they matter, like they have a purpose here, and they're gifted, and they're here for a reason. It's like, that's like, I wish everybody knew that, but I almost feel like you said, like, there's something going on in our culture that sends a different message to people. Right. So what is that? Like, what do you think that is?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of things, but I think the biggest thing is that there's a couple of things. For one, our society is struggling for purpose. Mm-hmm. So I think think about it if you were called to fly, but you've been forced to live in a cage, then what happens is that you begin to lose heart, or lose the love for the sky. You long for it, but you can't have it. And so when you're reaching and you can't have it, you're told you can't have it, you're told you'll never be it, then eventually you lose your ability to even believe you can fly. And then what
Mhm.
happens is you begin to lose your ability to be able to survive outside of that cage. Then that cage becomes who you are, becomes your identity. And then it gets darker and darker and darker. And eventually you forget that you're even an eagle. You see what I'm saying? You forget that you were called to something greater. And then and living in that capacity is absolutely detrimental to health. It's detrimental to your mind. And we live in a society that says everything's got to move so fast. You got to do this right now. All this, we're moving so fast,
Mhm.
but we're not purposeful. People are just living. I tell people all the time, there's a quote that Oscar Wilde said. He said, what did he say? Oh, okay. Oscar Wilde said that to live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist, and that is all. And when we
Yeah.
think about that, we live in this world that tells us, just YOLO, you only live once, it doesn't matter, do whatever. And it's this mass, there's a whole lot of things going on that have shifted our mindsets to where we don't value the things that matter most. And so we get caught up in valuing things that are not valuable, such as other people's opinions, such
Yeah.
as what the world says, Instagram, social media, such as all of these other things that are literally superficial at best. That becomes our foundation. And
Mhm.
that's what fortifies our hearts. So when those things go wrong or go awry or they fail you, which they will, you have nothing to stand on. You have nothing to fall back on. And if you don't have a purpose, that's going to be the thing, the fuel that drives you and guides you forward. When stuff goes wrong and you trip and fall, you have nothing to look for. You have nothing to look to. You have nothing to build you up. You're lost
Mhm.
because you were running blindfolded through the forest. And that's why I think purpose is so important. If more people had purpose and really understood why they were here, then I think we would have much less depression. We would have much less suicide. We would have much less issue. We would have much less emotional and mental health issues, because I believe that one of the things that is lacking is purpose.
Yeah. That reminds me of one of my mentors, Kathy Haller says, the opposite of depression isn't happiness, it's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that feel like they lack purpose, what would your advice be to them?
Mm-hmm.
Or they just feel lost? Because even when I say that, like, it was hard for me to even say they lack purpose, because it's like, no, you have a purpose, like, so it's, but they feel lost, like they're not sure what to direct their energy and their life towards, but they feel that calling, like they were meant for more. What do you
Okay.
think they
Yeah.
do?
Okay. I had to kind of think about it for a minute. I would say, so when I was in the Marine Corps, we did this training. We did the land nav at night, right? And I don't know if you guys did that, but you do land nav at night. And so when you're out there in the middle of the night, it's 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and you're out there with your fire team and there's no lights, all you have is the moonbeam, right? You have your little flashlight. And if
Mhm.
you ever get lost in the woods and you can't see, it's dark, you don't know where to go, the first thing, one of the things they tell you is look for a moonbeam, look for the light, look for that little flashlight and seek that flashlight. Go toward the light. And so I would challenge anybody, if you're searching for purpose, if you're searching for meaning, seek the light. Now, everybody has the different beliefs on what the light is, of course. Obviously, for me, I would say seek God. But I would tell anybody else who's still trying to figure their beliefs out, I would say this: commit yourself to the highest possible good you can think of. Commit yourself
Mhm.
to impacting the people in the most positive way that you can. Commit yourself to just make your purpose little steps. Be the best version of yourself, period.
Yeah.
Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. As you do those things, and what happens is that as the vessel becomes more efficient, as the vessel becomes cleaner, the vessel becomes more energized and more full of rest, and you're like, wow, you start to feel better about yourself by achieving those little goals. And then you commit yourself to just daring to be different. Culture is telling you to be one way. I'm gonna just see what this feels like to be this way. And I think those little things can add to, they can open your mind. It clears out all that negativity. It clears out all of those the clouds and things that are blocking you. I mean, they say something like 85% of depression amongst young people is because of a lifestyle. Is because of a poor lifestyle, unhealthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
I would say that if you're looking for purpose and you're feeling lost, I would just tell you to stop for a minute and look for the light. Commit yourself to the highest possible good you can think of. Commit yourself to the best possible version of yourself as possible. Let's say possible twice. But commit yourself to the best, being the best possible version of yourself that you can. And as you, it'll open your mind to being able to see more. And remember, the closer to the light that you get, the brighter it will get, and the more you'll be able to see.
Oh, that's so good. And it's so right, because it's like, I think back in my life where I feel like I know my purpose now, but I wasn't always that way. But when I started down that journey, it was about being a better version of myself. And in a sense, it shifted my energy and my awareness. And I was able to see more, and I felt more connected because I was like, to God. And that's my own personal faith. But that's how I feel like it started, like when I backtrack it. So I feel like that's really good advice for people to, in a sense, start small and just focus on being a better version in yourself in the everyday things, and you will find your purpose. Like it will be shown to you as you follow that greater calling, right?
It's funny when you say that, because it makes me think about there's that one scripture that says the Lord orders your steps.
Yeah.
It doesn't say he orders your leaps. It doesn't say he orders your sprints, orders your steps.
Oh, so good.
Life is meant to My life is meant to be one step at a time. And if you're ever lost and you can't see in front of you, you wouldn't run faster. You wouldn't just sprint in whatever direction. No, because you can't see where you're going. What are you going to do? You're going to take one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. And next thing you know, you're out the forest. Next thing you know, you're at the top of the mountain. I noticed you do a lot of like nature stuff. So you know all about this kind of thing. And it's one little by little, step by step. And before you realize it, you'll be at the peak of the mountain. You're like, wow, I made it. And so so that's where.
And the culture thing, if you think about it, our culture sends this message that makes us feel so unfulfilled or like lacking and not enough, because it sends this message that you should be all the way here. You should be on the top of the mountain. And it's like, no, because God's message is it's step by step. Like I order the steps, and you take each step with like your faith. And I think, I'm someone who is like, I'm just like you, because I heard this, that in the way that you spoke, like, I'm not here to forcing you to believe anything. I'm not throwing Bibles at everybody. Like that's not like how I show up. I think it's your own personal journey, and it's, your own relationship with God or whatever you choose to call it. But I will say, hands down, the people that I've seen in my life who truly like generate the sense of peace and like joy for their life, they have a strong faith. I've seen that.
I agree with you. I agree 100%. I mean, faith is, you can't think about it. Everybody has faith in something. Even people say they don't have any faith. You have faith that you don't have faith. You have faith in nothing. Think about it. I remember this quote that I heard in this song. It said, there's a place where fear has to face the God that you know. And I think that everybody has faith in something. The question is, what do you have faith in? How much power does it have over you? And how is it affecting your direction and your steps?
Yeah. Is it serving you? Whatever it is that you have faith in, is it serving you in your life? Like really thinking about that, because a lot of my work too with coaching people and helping them, move forward in their life, I always talk about what thought serves you best. Like when they're like, they're telling me they're thinking a certain way, like, this isn't going to work out for me and blah, blah, blah. And they're finding out all this evidence. I'm like, does it serve you to choose to believe that when you could believe this? Because your beliefs have everything to do with, the direction that you're going to take your life.
No, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I mean, you figure it's the battlefield of the mind, and you have a choice to make. That's the hard part, because you have a choice. You choose. I heard a guy the other day talking about depression. He was saying he said, you choose depression. If you believe in depression, then yes, you're going to be depressed. It's a choice.
Yeah.
But if you choose to believe in something else, just because, and here's the thing, and I wrote this down the other day, and it says, the fact that you're feeling doesn't mean what you're feeling is fact.
Oh, say it again.
Okay. The fact that you're feeling doesn't mean what you're feeling is fact.
Yes.
Just because you feel it, just because if you're feeling this way doesn't mean it's true. Because your feelings, my mother used to tell me this growing up, emotions will cloud your judgment, and frustration to make you lose focus. You know what I'm saying? And what happens is a lot of times we can allow our emotions to blind us from truth. I mean,
Yes.
we see that in the culture, we see that in politics, we see that in society, relationships, you see it all over the place. The reality is that our emotions, they say emotions make good slaves, but terrible masters. When we allow our emotions to lead us, it'll lead us to destruction. When we control our emotions, we can use them as power. You see what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
it's that blend between passion and logic. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, you could feel things, but you have to not lose sight of truth. Don't let what you're feeling cause you to lose sight of you.
Exactly. And who you want to be.
Who you
So
want.
that makes me think about, I was hiking recently with my husband on the trail, and I was a little frustrated about how some things were handled recently with this other transaction. And I was expressing that to him. And I was like, yeah, so I think this person is just like this and blah, blah, blah. And I started doing my drama thing, that we do. And he said, Ange, I just want the facts, just the facts, because I think your gut and your emotions make up this story, and this story isn't serving you. And I was
Yeah,
like, you're so right. Because even if I'm like, well, it's true, this person is this way, does it serve me to believe that about someone, to give my energy and focus there? It
right,
doesn't. And the
right,
straight up facts would just be this person did not do this,
right,
period. And I get to make up the whole story about what it means, how they are, blah, blah, blah.
right.
So sometimes even just like that brings us so much peace in our life. If we even just watch our mind do the drama stuff it does and just be like, no, no, just want the facts. And
Right,
then you make a conscious decision to decide, what do I want to believe?
right,
And what belief is in alignment with who I want to be? So if I
right.
want to be this person that, is faith filled or has peace or joy, what belief is in alignment with that feeling?
Right.
Right.
Right. I used to tell
Um,
my kids in my programs, I used to tell my youth in my youth program, I used to tell my kids, whenever I catch them doing something like off the, out of pocket or whatever the case is, or they letting their emotions get getting angry and all stuff. I said, hey, I tell them one thing, hey, say, hey, you're better than that.
yeah.
And they would look at me
I
and they'd be
love
like,
that.
but coach, hey, you're better than that. And they'll just be like, you right, you right, you right. And you don't realize that just that little moment of taking a second to think and process before you actually respond and act can
Yeah.
literally make or break your future. You know what I mean? Like,
Everything.
I mean, you
I
look
love
at what
that.
the whole Will Smith situation. When you allow those emotions to get involved, and people could argue that whether it's staged or not, but at the end of the day, when you let your emotions take over, then you make decisions that can impact your destiny. You make
Yeah.
decisions that could literally impact everything forever. And it can overshadow all the great things that you've done up to this point, or all the progress you've made, or it can overshadow everything. Because what? We always look at the one bad thing, not all the good things. And so
Yeah.
we have to be very mindful of that, man. And that's just the way it is, and we
That that brings me to, just as you were saying that, like even moments in my own life where I've regretted something that I've done, like, and it's often when I'm in a situation, let's say, and people are acting a fool, and you just get wrapped up in it and you're like frustrated, and like I'm thinking about like job situations and you're like, forget it, I quit, right? But you worked so hard to get to this point, but it's like
right,
you're acting on this emotion that's happening right now. So even when I'm working with my clients now, I'm like, we make a decisions. Don't make a decision when you're in a bad place. When you feel like
yeah,
you're so down,
yeah,
do whatever work you need to do to shift that awareness and that energy, and then come from that higher place
yeah,
or that place of love and make a decision from that place. That
yeah,
has that has served me a lot in my life because I'm not
yeah,
as reactive as I used to be. Like I really sit back and wait, because one of my other mentors says that she wants all of her good buys to be good buys. And like
oh, there
that
you
really
go.
hit
That's
me
good.
too. Instead of coming from that place, even if the situation sucks, like you want to show up from a place of love. I was just coaching one of my friends who is experiencing some relationship challenges and trying to figure out what she wants to do with this whole relationship. And I was telling her, like, regardless of what you choose to do, make sure that you're showing up first and foremost from a place of love, because that's the
Yeah,
kind of person you want to be. And
yeah,
you're making a decision from that place, whether that is to choose to stay or leave or whatever it is. come from that energy first, because that is going to always serve you.
Absolutely. I mean, you figure, and Martin Luther King, I mean, he was speaking in the context of race, but I mean, hate is too heavy a burden to carry. I mean, when we put ourselves, I mean, look, I get, I've been there. I've made some decisions, said some things. I'm like, that was not the way. You know, I saw this video the other day. This guy, he had these two bottles and he shook them up, bottles of pop or Coke or something. He shook them up, he put them down, and then he popped the top on one. And it spilled, you know, obviously it spilled all over. It went crazy, things like that. And then he went over and once the other one calmed down, he popped it open and he drank it. And he said, listen, he said, this is a representation of you and your anger. When you get angry and you let your emotions go and you pop your top, you open your mouth or you act and you just let it all, what happens? It spills everywhere and it becomes no good to anybody.
Oh, that's such a good visual.
Yeah,
See, that's what you were.
Yeah.
You're so good at this stuff, Reese, because that's what I'm talking about. If you guys are listening right now, if you just listen to how quickly, like, even these are things that you've seen, but you come up with like the best metaphors and the way of like how to explain something where like you just really get it. So obviously I know that you're a gifted speaker, but I got to ask this because I want to go back to like the moment where, you know, following your dreams, and even when you are clear around like what your strengths are and what you're supposed to do, fear shows up for you. Like that's part of the process. So I'm curious to know, maybe you have a story that pops in your mind where you felt like a lot of fear around you doing your work in the world. Like, you know, it's the thing you're supposed to do, but you like felt, you felt the fear. Can you tell me about that and like how you worked through that?
That's a tough one. So this may be kind of, you know, one of them things. I actually will say that I have found myself facing more fear in the personal realm than I have in the professional realm.
Wow. Yeah.
I found that, like I told you earlier, when I do what I do, it kind of just flows and I feel more alive there. I would say that more of my fear has come from exposing the side of me that's off the stage. I just be honest. I mean, I think that, you know, because when you're stepping into something that you were made and wired for, yeah, you get nervous at times. Yeah, you don't want to mess up. You know, you're wondering what people are going to think, etc. But
You
when
get in
it's
the
something
zone.
when it's something that's in you and you're passionate about, it just flows naturally.
Yep.
The
I get
question
that.
becomes then, though, is for me at least, it was after I get off the stage, interacting with people, you know, actually connecting with people beyond just being more than just the talking head of sort. You know, my greatest fears have been personal. My greatest fears have always been just or challenges. I don't even want to call them fears. I'll just say my greatest challenges have always been off the stage. Have always been dealing with people, connecting, you know, dealing with the thoughts of, was what I just said enough to impact enough people? Did I get the message across? It's always that secondary, it's the follow-up thoughts. It's what do I need to change next time? Because it's like, dang, man, you know,
That's
you're
for me
always
too.
your own worst critic, right? So you hear yourself speak, and then I'm thinking like, dang, I flubbed my words here, or I didn't say that quite right, or dang, I
Yes.
wonder if they got that, you know, and those are the things, and you have to be very careful, because if you dwell in those thoughts, hyper cynicism, hyper criticism to yourself, then what happens is that can transition itself into doubt.
Yeah. And then
And
you
then
don't
you
want
can
to
be
show
able,
up
right. Then you
after
start
that.
questioning, like, dang, especially if you mess up. If you go out there and say something, you know, you mess up your words or what you were gonna say, and dang, I didn't say it, or the one thing I wanted to say I didn't say, and then now I'm like,
You beat yourself
dang,
up.
did they get anything? You know, and
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that to me, I think is probably the toughest part.
that I so resonate with that, because like you, like when I'm teaching or training or doing something and I really feel like that's my thing, like I love it, I can feel my energy, just like I'm in the zone. I could just, I
Right.
don't even know what comes down, like the wisdom, you know, it just comes
Oh,
out,
right.
right? And then you feel like I'm not worried about what people are thinking about me necessarily at that time, because I'm vibing at such a higher awareness that it doesn't, that takes a lower, I feel like, energy level and awareness to be like, oh, what are they thinking about me? But I'm in the zone and that's higher energy, so that you're not thinking about that. But
Right.
after the fact, I almost always have vulnerability hangovers every
Mhm.
time. And I feel like, do you feel like that where you're like, I don't, it's just this weird feeling where you're like, then you start thinking about like, oh, I should have said this. And,
Right,
was this the right,
right,
yeah, was I impactful? Like, and then you just feel so vulnerable, but it's always
right.
like after the fact.
Yeah. I think especially if you have one of those sessions, at least for me, when I'm dealing with my young people, my teenagers, and I go speak to these schools, sometimes without my without my thought or permission or whatever, a personal story will come out from my life that I'm like, whoa, I did not intend to share that. And then now
Yes.
I just shared it, and what are they thinking? How are they processing what I just shared with them? And I'm just like, dang, like yikes. And I'm sitting there like, wow, I just really laid it out there that time, didn't I? You know,
Yep.
and then but I think that's good though. I think we need that. I think what made so many people, I think what makes people more impactful is not how clever you are, how great of a speaker you are, but how vulnerable you can be.
Yeah.
I think
How
it's how
genuine.
open, how connecting and human can you be? Because you don't have to. I mean, you could be the greatest speaker of all time, but if nobody feels like they can connect with you, if they can't relate to you, if they can't say I'm feeling what you're feeling, or you feeling what I'm feeling, or we can meet on this level that is deeper than just, hey, you can do it,
Right.
challenge yourself. Like, I'm gonna tell you, I've been there. I tell my kids all the time, I say, listen, I ain't gonna tell you I was one of these students that, like, oh, I was a great student. I focused on my goals. And blah, 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 blah,
Right.
like, no, man, I was not. I wasn't a good student. I was the kid that I would do work and then just not turn it in. I wouldn't do any work. I was getting suspended. I was, getting referrals and being late for class. I mean, I was that guy. I liked the ninth grade so much, I did it twice. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so it's one of the things where, you have to just, yes, I agree with you. I would just say I agree with the fact that you can have these vulnerability hangovers. You can, you
Yeah.
start to share, you get to flowing, and sometimes more flow comes out than you expect.
Yeah.
And what do we do then?
And then it's like when you realize like a lot of the things I've done and I've said, like where it's like, oh, too much information, and like after the fact, like, why did you tell me about that story? And then
Right.
I'm like, but it's served me, because I think that's why people have often said that they felt like I was genuine or so relatable, or they love my classes because they're so different, because I'm being my true self. And I'm super vulnerable. Like, I'll tell people straight up like it is. Like the other day I was on this major podcast getting interviewed, and somehow I brought up the concept of like being neglected as a child and all these things, and I was like, Ange, what the heck, like, but I
Yeah.
felt like it was, but I do remember other times, like, it wasn't like a therapy session or anything, I just kind of
Right.
like touched on this thing, but it
Right.
made me think about if I was listening to someone who was real with me and told
Yeah.
me, like, about their childhood and brought up something like that, I would find them so much more relatable, because they're being genuine. They're showing up with like genuine energy, and like no strategy or no little clever witty thing is
Right.
gonna be better than genuine energy for
That's
anyone.
authenticity.
Exactly.
Authenticity is
It
the
always
ultimate.
wins. You can't
It
hide
always
that.
is. Yeah.
And that's
I
why
do.
people love live videos, like, why we're
Mhm.
so interested in that, because we want to see people as they really are. So I
Mhm.
guess for anyone that's listening, the message that I just want to say when I'm talking about this is that, like, when you get in the zone of honoring your own gifts and strengths, and like being your true self as God has like intended for you to be, you will prosper in everything you do. Like, I 100% believe that. I think the biggest thing that's getting in our way right now is that we try to like mask it, or we don't want to be our true self or speak our truth. That's what's causing you not to walk in like your purpose, if you're
Mhm.
concerned about that, or
Mhm.
have the results, like the desires and the love and the feelings that you want to
Mhm.
have. It's that stuff. It's you not honoring who you were made to be
Yeah.
truly.
Absolutely. I tell my kids all the time, because they always, dealing with a lot of different kids. They always want to be real. Like, that's their thing. I got to be real. I'm this, that, and other. I got to be real. I got to be real. I got to be real. I say, let me tell you something. The realest thing you can be is yourself.
Exactly.
So, because at the end of the day, anything else is a betrayal of your own soul.
Yeah. And that energy is there. We feel that.
In my life, I found that the most effective that I've ever been has been when I have been challenged in the area that I'm most challenged. So like for me, when I speak, like, and even to this day, vulnerability is not my like strong suit. Like I'm really like I have to actively every day work on trying to be more vulnerable. You know, I'm always myself, but there are things about me that I just that ain't, you don't need to know all that. I oftentimes keep people at arm's length just for a lot of different reasons, you know what I mean? But I have found that in that area that I'm most challenged, when I do end up tapping into that, that's where I'm the most effective.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you have people who may be the most insecure and they speak confidence. What happens is sometimes they're preaching to themselves.
Yeah.
There's so many dynamics, I think, in this whole human experience, as we say. And I think that at the end of the day, the goal is to be as authentic as possible.
Definitely. I think
Because
so
you're
too.
challenged others to be more.
That's you living your life, I would feel like, in alignment with what you're supposed to be. Like the whole verse, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. That has been something that has keeps showing up in the recent days. So I feel like it's something I should say. I drove to this burger store, like this burger shop in the drive-thru, and got a burger, which I don't even, it's so crazy. I don't even eat like this in real life. Like normally I'm like a health freak, but since I've been hiking galore, it's my whole body has changed. Anyways, I'm driving through the drive-through, and they had this little, someone had wrote a quote that said you're fearfully and wonderfully made, so you could see it as you were driving through. And I was like, that's interesting. Then I go out for dinner, and then that quote was brought up again, and I feel like it kind of like solidifies this whole message that like you were made with really great intention. Like even if you grew up in a crappy family, like, or you described it as that, like you were chosen, like you were meant to live in that space, to be who God was going to use it to make you who you were going to be and what you're supposed to do in the world. And like that really, I still remember the study when we talked about this, like it really hit me to think about just my own background and how I grew up, like how I was chosen to be in that family, and God was going to use that. Like he knew what he was doing, putting me in that. And I just think go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I was going to say, just when you said that, it made me think about like the reality is that God, for we know Romans, for we know God causes all things to work out for the good of those who love him and are called to his purpose. So when we really break that down, all things, that's good, bad, ugly, indifferent. He can use all things to ultimately work out for the good for those who love him and are called to his purpose. And so what happens is that a lot of times we get stuck in the all things and we lose sight of the love and purpose. And if we were intentional, like you said, we were crafted intentionally. So that means as a result, we should choose to live intentionally. But unfortunately, our intentionality isn't quite as strong as it should be. We live reactively. And so then we get stuck. When you live reactively, you get stuck at the all things. When you live intentionally, you focus on the love and purpose, and it pushes you through the all things. And I think that's a big thing that we have to get back to, living intentionally, like you said, because we were intentionally made. And there's and people have experienced things that we can't even fathom. We can't even comprehend some of the things that people have experienced, even right now as we speak. All we can do is continue to understand is that regardless of what you have experienced, it doesn't have to define you. In fact, if anything, it could be the thing that propels you forward. Because guess what? If you've experienced some of the worst things ever, I would say that you have a story to tell. Because you're not the only person out there who has experienced that. But those people who have experienced that think and feel like they're alone. And so that's when you take those experiences, you take those backgrounds, the way you grew up, the way I grew up, the things, we take all of that and we put it and piece it together because it writes a beautiful story. It writes a beautiful book. And at the end of the day, we have to trust that.
That's so good. I feel like it reminds me of one of my favorite questions to ask is like, what do you want to make this mean? Like what do you want to make this mean? Like, even when, we experience rejection, like I do a lot of career coaching and things like that. And there's sometimes, rejection when you're putting yourself out there. And I'm like, what do you want to make this mean? Do you want to make it mean that you suck? Right? Or do you want to make it mean that there's something better for you? Like you get to decide, you get to choose in any given moment what you want to make things mean. Right. And the thing is too, I've seen in our culture, the biggest thing I personally think people struggle with is like, there's several things. The authenticity part, like being true to themselves, because you're so focused on what other people think about you. And you give so much power to other people's like thoughts about you that it stops you from like living your true purpose. Right. Because you're not being authentic to yourself. So there's that. So the fear of what others think. And then also this lack of faith in what's possible. It blows my mind, like some of the things where people get so wrapped up in like stupid little things. Like I even think about job stuff, like, like you're transitioning like to a different role. And you're like, I don't know if I could find the role I want. I don't know if, and then I'm just kind of like, okay, let's just look right now. Like God can do anything, anytime, anywhere. Like he can align anything. Like it just, your life could change like this tomorrow. Like so much is possible for you. I mean, look around at what's been created. So just like reminding even our own brains around like what's already been done. And like these little things we worry about, like ain't nothing to God. Like I just need to say that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you said it. It's funny because it makes me think about that old saying. You say like impossible is I'm possible. You know, like, if we get back to that mindset, man, at the end of the day, look, if you're still here and breathing, there's a reason. So whatever your situation is, whether you're at the job, whether you're at school and you're just wandering around, I don't know if I could, look, you're here. There's a reason. So be everything. That was Army, be all you can be, right? That's what they used to say back in the day, right? Be all you can be. There it is. That's your purpose and reason. Be all you can be.
Yeah.
Because anything is possible. I mean, think about it. We as men throughout history, and when I say men, I mean men and women and human beings.
Yeah.
We have built cities. We've built nations. We have created ideas and science and art, and we have done so many great things with our hands. God has built it, like I said, we're made in His image. So we have. There's power.
Yeah.
We have to, but the world doesn't want you to know that. You know what I'm saying? The world is not going to come here and tell you that you have power, because if you realize how much power you have, then you take it from the world.
Oh, that's good. That is so true. It's like the whole message that I share is like, like you have the power to intentionally design the life that you want. And when you think about it, living most in alignment, I love that you said this, is like you were intentionally created. So you're meant to intentionally show up in the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's really about like anything you want is possible in a nutshell. We don't have to comply to certain things that other people's beliefs, like even just, I always like to say is just because it's true for them doesn't mean it has to be true for you.
Right.
And always just checking in with yourself, because I was just talking to a girl that was wanting to buy her home. Shout out to Ashley if you're listening. But anyways, I was just talking to her about how it can be really hard to get funding. We live in this tiny house, and it can be hard to get funding for tiny houses. Like this is a common thing because it's not really considered a home and yada, yada, bank stuff. Yeah. So anyways, I was telling her about the story, and she's like, wow, I didn't realize it was so hard to get funding, because basically it came easy for her. And I was like, wait, I kind of like went back and I was like, just because this has been people's reality that it's been hard does not need to mean that it needs to be your reality. So let's just check ourselves right there. And that just kind of reminds me of in our life right now, like, are you believing a story? Like, because somebody else has had a hard time finding a job, had a hard time finding a house, had a hard time finding a significant other. Right. Just because it was true for them does not mean it has to be true for you. And anything is possible. Going back to that.
Absolutely. I mean, it reminds me of that story. I don't know if you're familiar with Les Brown.
Oh, I love Les Brown. Yes.
Yeah, Les is my guy. But I remember listening to Les Brown, a few years back, and he was talking about his story and how, he was labeled as EMR and, all this kind of stuff. And the teacher asked him to come up to the board and do something on the board. He said, well, I'm not in your class. He says, come do this on the board. He says, well, I can't. Well, why not? Well, because I'm EMR, I this, that, and other. And he says, listen, somebody's opinion of you does not have to be your reality.
Yes.
And the reality is what has happened in the past to you or somebody else or anything else does not have to define where you go.
Exactly. So it's like you don't have to identify as that. Like, so
right,
I always talk, like, what are we identifying as? Like, even like these beliefs, like even depression, like that's a common thing. People are like, I'm depressed. You identify as a depressed person, or I'm an anxious person. And I struggle with that so much because I'm like, don't do that to yourself. Don't hold on to that identity, because what happens is now your brain is going to look for evidence of how that's who I am. It's just who I am. And you program those beliefs, and then your life is a result of that. So like, we really got to look at like, what are you choosing to make true for you? What are you identifying as, all these different labels? And is it serving you? What do you actually want to believe about yourself? And how can we start to find evidence to support that belief? Like for me, I'm someone who wants to believe that everything is possible. So with that mindset, like I identify as someone who has a strong faith. So now like my brain just looks for evidence around like, ooh, look at this cool thing God did. Look at this thing, look at that. Like, and it's like, I program that belief, and then my life is evidence of, I always say I want my life to be an example of what's possible when you believe. And I feel like that's starting to show up for me. People are like, the craziest stuff happened for you. I feel like things are always working out for you. And it's like, because I feel like I choose to believe that anything is possible for me.
Yeah. I mean, think about something simple as death and life are in the power of the tongue.
Yeah.
Words have power. What you say, my grandmother, we used to always, growing up, she used to always say, if you said something that was like off, right? Like, I'm this. Okay, you have what you say.
Ooh.
I mean, your words are physical properties, and they craft your future. And so you have to understand is that what you keep constantly telling yourself or saying to yourself, even casually, what you even casually say still implants in your mind. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Oh man, I'm so stupid. It's like, I get it. We have stupid moments. I've done some really dumb stuff too. You know what I mean? But guess what? I don't have to tell myself I'm dumb. I don't have to say that to myself. I don't have to say, oh, like you said, I'm depressed. Well, okay, you have what you say. I'm strong. I mess with my kids, and they always like, oh my gosh, coach, why we had to say this? I would always mess with them and say, all right, everybody repeat after me. I am great. I am great. I am strong. I am strong. I'm a rock. I'm a rock. I can't be stopped. I can't be stopped. My younger kids, they like to put the beat and they jump around. When they get a little older, I ain't saying that. But I say, listen, you ain't got to say it all the time, but I would challenge you. Believe it. Put it in your mind. Tell yourself, I am great. I am strong, no matter what. Because what happens is the moment that your words do not align, the moment that your words align with something that goes against what you want or believe in, then what happens is your want and beliefs begin to shift to those words.
So true.
And you won't even realize it.
Yeah, it's all about what are you saying to yourself? Like really look at that, because I'm always talking to myself in my own mind. Like when things like hiking up the mountains, I'm like, you're strong, you can do this. Like I constantly, because I know the power, like you said, of the words, and this is even, biblically supported as well. But like even science, look at like all the research and studies behind like how we show up when we start to tell ourselves a different story or a different thought.
Right.
So, okay. So I know we're running. Oh, shoot. I didn't even know what time it was, but I really want, Reese, before we go, I wanted to see if you would be willing to share one of your poems or your poetry with us.
Okay. Man, I don't know. There's so many pieces that I have out there. What would you like to hear?
Well, what's a message that kind of relates to what we've been talking about? That's
okay.
Anything come to mind?
Let's see. Okay. All right, I got one for you. It's been attributed to Harriet Tubman once said, I saved 1,000 slaves, but I could have saved 1,000 more had they actually known they were slaves. And I find it funny because it feels like not much has changed. It would seem that these words are still a direct reflection of the people of today. So join me on this underground railroad as I try to intercept your train of thought with this truth. Because I don't know about you, but something's wrong. When I look at our society, all that I'm seeing is crack fiends on the corner fiending for freedom, letting the system beat them, infected with this idea that ignorance is bliss. And all the while they lay back and French kiss the devil's lips loose. We become so seduced by Lucifer's tongue, we've been convinced that it's foolish to run from the addiction. A constant contradiction is what we're living. See, we claim in Christ so we can do more sinning. And then we live in this loser's life thinking that we're winning. We're bred to think that our life's mission is what's depicted on television is forever sickening the way to portray success. We'll sell our souls for a couple of dollars, likes on Instagram, political parties, skin colors, and fake breasts, talent been laid to rest, and you wonder why folks are stressed. They say if you do better, you do better. That's far from the case. Because the right decision seems to be a conflict of interest in this human race. We choose to take this path of destruction. Pissing on pioneers like parks in the back of the bus, and it's crazy to me. Have we lost our sight to succeed? Do we indulge in image and greed instead of all the things that we need? We spend a small fortune on the latest J's, iPhones, and riding on 23s, but the rent ain't paid and you got miles to feed. Mercy me is scary. See, we call to the seat of Mary at our convenience, but the rest of the time we roll with the demons, sipping on sin and gin, spiked with the blood of Jesus to cool us, deceived us. Living off the flesh like a bunch of leeches, can't see the future, needs us to break the chains and pave the way for brighter days. Enlighten our children so they don't give in to the lies of slaves. I strive to pray that one day the world will say enough destruction, let's create. And build our souls like totem poles and reach for the sky. And see the world through the eagle's eye. And maybe we can all, white, black, brown, blue, Puerto Rican, purple, Asian, can soar to the end of the rainbow where freedom lies.
Oh, that was so good. And it was so relative to everything that we shared. Thanks so much for sharing that. So tell us where we can find you and follow your work.
Okay. You can find me at Instagram or on Instagram at Reese the Poet, and that's ReeseThePoet. It's not spelled like crazy or nothing, one straight word. Yes, Fenton Reese is the name. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. You can find me on TikTok at Moments with Reese. I do a series on TikTok of different stuff and late night poetry and all kind of good things. But yes, I'm your friendly neighborhood Mr. Reese, also known as Reese the Poet. And that's just, and I approve this message.
Thanks, Reese. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, pleasure.
All right, y'all, that was a different kind of episode than we are used to doing, with a little poetry in the mix. I hope you really enjoyed the message that was there and it impacts you in the way that you needed it to. So if it did, let us know. Leave us a review if you haven't yet on the show. And also, I want to remind you that we have our book club starting, our book club and coaching program. And if you're interested in that, you can find the info at bit.ly/cheers to happy. And we close the doors on that on April 3rd. But that's where we're going to do all this work that we were talking about with Reese. We're going to do the work on really changing our thoughts, like retraining our brain so that it can align with the life that we want. All right, hope you have an awesome day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.